bone structure, the joints, and the IK on our character is working pretty well. I've got version 1 loaded here, so you can actually work with the same one. And if we click on, let's say, the right hand and we hit our transform, actually not the bone, but the actual goal, if we get that right. Now sometimes that's going to happen. Happens to me a lot, that the selection, you hit a bone. In that case, I actually hit the thumb when that thing happened. Do this. Go over here, and with that goal selected, let's start renaming these. This is right hand goal. Keep this organized. And under the display underneath, you can actually label it as well. That will help see things when you're out there. You can actually see a name right there. And you can offset that label. So I'm just going to drag, not that much. We're going to drag that out like that. That's going to help us see the name of these. So the more you add, the better it will be displayed. And then for the locator shape, which is a little bit small, select locator shape. And down here you can see size. Let's just hit gang select, and we can actually increase that. And that'll make things a little bit easier to select. Let's move over here to the right side and do the same thing. We'll click on that goal right there. And we're going to click and hold, name that left hand goal. And we'll do the same in the label, left hand goal. And I know this sometimes seems like a lot to set up, but it does make things a lot easier when you're actually trying to select and move your character around. Then to locator shape, hit the gang select, and let's just increase that. Okay, so that's how it's going to look. A lot easier to work with those. I can, bam, get that right away. A lot easier than accidentally selecting a bone. So I'm going to save this as version 2. File, save incremental. All right, so we select that goal now. You can see that hand's moving really well. The arm is just looking great. Very happy with how that's positioning in there. And actually, this one's a little screwed up because I was playing with those weights. So we can go back and adjust that. I'll leave that for you to do. But take a look here at the one I didn't, where I actually let Modo automatically do it. And you can see that that arm comes down really nicely there. Nice little shape. No pinching, and it's working really well. But if I move this arm around, you can see see that elbow? Boom, boom, just kind of pops. All right, we need a little bit of a control for that. And what that's called is an UpVector. And it's actually just a constraint that tells that elbow where to point so that we have a little more control. All right, so the way we're going to do this is add a locator. And the locator's right here. Create a new item in the scene. We'll click it, and it adds it down right at the 0, 0 axis. All right, so what I want to do is actually insert this into our hierarchy right here. And there's a way to do that with this drop action. Now, when I first saw the drop action, I was like, what are those do? But they actually make a lot of sense because you can do things very fast and very easily, but the drop action works in the OpenGL. It doesn't actually work so much in the items list. You got to just drag and drop. That's the kind of the whole point. So when you hear drop action, that means you're dragging and dropping something to something else. So it's a great, fast way to parent. And again, it's that whole process of working at the speed of thought, not really having to think about what you're doing, even though you do. So now I need to get this into here. So before I do, I need to remember to get into setup mode. Okay, because it can really screw you up if you don't when you start putting some of these in. Trust me, I've done it. So we're going to select this locator right down here. I'll click on that guy. And I'm actually going to make his display a little bit bigger so we can see it. Like that. And with the drop action set to insert, we are going to click, hold, and when you do this, I'm holding the mouse down on this thing. It says locator. Okay? And of course, if you renamed it to goal or something else, root, whatever, it would actually say that as well. So be very careful. Pay attention when you're doing that because there's been times where you'll drag the wrong thing. I know I have. So then we're going to drop it right on top of that. You'll see that it matches and aligns just fine. It's called locator. We're actually going to call this arm root, like that. But if you had compensation on, actually I should do this before I rename it. If compensation was on, what will happen is this, and this might happen to you. You might say, okay, well, I've got insert on. I've got this arm root thing I want to put in here, and I'm going to insert it, and nothing happens. Well, there's a little line drawn to this, but it looks like it went into the structure here, but it doesn't look like it moved. Why? Because compensation is parent in place. So you got to make sure that that is not on. All right, so we'll make sure that that is off. We'll take this guy and insert it. And then we're going to name this right arm root. Okay? Well, what do we do now? Now we're going to add another locator. And I'm going to make the display a little bit bigger. Now this time I don't want to insert it. I just want a match and align, or match position even is fine. And you don't have to do it as a drop action, but works really easy. You can drag and drop it on, and it matches the position. If I undo it, there's another way. You can hold the Shift key and select right on that joint, and under the Setup tab, match and align item position. Works the same way. And then I'll hit W and I'll move that up. This is going to be our UpVector. So let's rename that UpVector. It's what something's going to point to. That's all. All right, so in order to get this UpVector to work, I need this root of this hierarchy. Remember that that's our whole hierarchy, the arm. I need the root of that, which is now inserted into there. And if you double click it, it should select the whole arm if that insert worked properly. So that's it right here. And notice that it went right in just fine. And now we have two arm roots, but one is actually the joint and one is a locator, even though they're technically all locators. But we'll keep that. And if that doesn't happen, then you did not insert it properly. Okay, so just something to be aware of. But I want this to point down to the goal. So I'm going to take that with a selection and then hold the Shift key and select the right-hand goal. And then under my modifiers, I want to say constrain. Give me a direction constraint. Just point right to that. Okay. Then if you open up the right arm root, you'll see that there is a direction constraint I just added. Okay. If then I hold the Shift key and select this UpVector, now this becomes available, assign UpVector. And then when I click that, you can see those kind of shift a little bit. That now points to that little locator, that UpVector. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's take the goal and make sure you select that. I tend to do that. I select the bone often without that. Now that's working okay. And then let's make sure we're out of setup mode. And so what happens now is when we move this, now we have a control for that elbow. Okay, and I kind of moved it and pinched it a little bit. And let's put this forward. There we go. And the reason mine's a little screwy is because I was demoing to you so much that all this stuff kind of should have been set up before I was moving it all around. But anyway, now we have a nice little control for that elbow that will help us constrain it when we move that arm around. But I also need to parent this, because otherwise we're going to have some issues when we move things around. So let's go back here to setup mode. All right, now you see how my character jumps? Okay, because I've been demoing, showing you all these things, everything's kind of out of place. So I highly recommend that when you're building this structure, building these joints, setting up your IK, don't get out of setup mode and start moving it around. And if you do, make sure you undo back to the original position, or get in, select whatever your joint is, and then you can come over here to your properties, and down here you can reset or zero out any of these positions or rotations after you move them around. So I did not do that, and that's why we're seeing these errors. Not so much errors, but little oddities in position. All right, so I want to parent this to what? Well, we could parent it right to there, and we can do a parent in place. So I can do a parent in place right for my drop action, like that. And then select this guy, click and drag and drop it right on the goal. So now when I come back and select the right hand, select that right hand goal, and I move this, now that arm is working quite well, and when I even roll it in really tight, that UpVector is holding that elbow in place. Okay, but it's moving with the goal. Now, like I said, we should probably all set all this up initially before we start moving things around. But you get the general idea. Now we can do the same thing down here at any of the legs. And again, you would just put a locator at the root, and then you put a locator parented to the knee or shin bone. You'd have that locator have a direction constraint to the heel or the foot, whichever you're calling it. And then you're going to have the UpVector set right to that knee. And that will help the knee from popping around as well.